Hello, I'm Anna Kalczyńska and welcome to World Talks. The greatest political comeback in US history has become a reality. Donald Trump has won the 2024 US presidential election, securing a historic return to the White House. What can Europe, Ukraine and Poland in particular expect from Trump's foreign policy over the next 4 years? Is the world ready for Trump's return? To explore this, I am joined by Diane Francis, Senior Fellow, Atlantic Council. Welcome, madam.
Hi.
Donald Trump has said he would transform America's relationships with allies and adversaries. What might the US foreign policy on Ukraine look like now?
Well, all we know is what he's promised. During the campaign, he said that he could solve the war with Russia in a day. And he sort of went on to say that he would just talk to both sides and force them to the table to negotiate a deal and impose a ceasefire. And he's talking about using, American, shall we say, diplomatic strength to make this happen. But of course, we'll see. We have to see what will happen. It depends on Ukraine and it depends on Russia. As to whether or not. Now, they both laid out their positions for negotiation, and they're nowhere near close to coming to an agreement at this point. But Trump is bragging that he can use his power and influence as president of the United States to impose a deal on these two parties.
Exactly. Following on what you said, earlier this morning, our guest, former European Commissioner Peter Balash, weighed on the implication of a Trump's victory, especially in light of his bold claim that he could resolve, indeed, the war in Ukraine within a single day. So let's hear.
We have seen his highly unrealistic declarations that he would be the one who could put an end to the war in Ukraine within 1 day. Well, everybody knows that it would be impossible, but he would be more open and more conciliant towards Russia. And this is a very dangerous behavior, especially for countries like Poland, which are very near to the conflict area.
Let's elaborate on that, because Trump repeated promises made, promises kept. Yet no one reasonable seems to believe to end the war in 24 hours. So do you think the president-elect has a plan?
No, I don't think he has a plan. I just think he thinks he can make a deal. This is a president who's a businessman. He's not a traditional politician. And to him, diplomacy is nothing more than deal making. You do this for me, I'll do this for you. If you don't do this for me, I'll do this back to you. I mean, this is what his mentality is all about. So he's saying that, he can get force these two to come together to talk. And, obviously the problem is that he appears to be very biased toward the Russian side. I mean, it's shocking that a man would become president of the United States who actually was quoted as calling the Ukrainian invasion by Russia genius. This is just quite frightening. So we'll have to see. I mean, he's not unbridled. He has guardrails. He has a Congress. He has a public. But this is terrifying, I think, from the point of view of Ukraine and Poland and Europe.
Right. Some say this is a transactional diplomacy. But in his victorious speech, Donald Trump has made clear that he intends to focus on America. That, of course, makes a shift, and to make the most powerful country probably in the world isolationists. But what in your mind can it mean? How can it translate into? Do you expect less interactions, less meetings, less American interference? What can happen?
Well, he's going to, first of all, concentrate on the economy of the United States. I put it to you this way. He's got 3 foreign policy issues to deal with. That's Russia's attack on Ukraine, China's potential attack on Taiwan, and China's economic attack on the American economy, and the Middle East, including, Israel versus Iran and its proxies. So these are the big hot button items he's got to deal with. And I think that he just is going to take this businessman's approach. Okay, what do you want? What do you need? What don't you need? And let's make a deal. And, it doesn't work that way. Already 1 million people have been died or wounded in the Russia-Ukraine war. People are not in any mood to do horse trading. They've already, spent blood and treasure on their viewpoints. And, the Ukrainians worry that he will just assume that they can draw the peace line where it is now, and they will lose 20% of their country. And then they will be forced by Russia to not join NATO, which will allow Russia to eventually invade the other 80%. I mean, this is the fear, and I don't think it's unfounded. And this is beyond Trump. Trump is a very transactional, one deal at a time type of mentality. He has no understanding of history. He doesn't understand cultures. And, this is going to be a constant problem for Ukraine, for Israel, and for China.
Quite revelatory was to observe the order of congratulations notes sent to the president-elect, Benjamin Netanyahu, Emmanuel Macron, Mark Rutte. So the last head of NATO sent a congratulatory message to President Trump, and he said, "I look forward to working with you again to advance peace through strength through NATO." So do you think this is a realistic approach?
Well, I think it's a good approach. It's the only approach that makes sense for Europe and for NATO. And don't forget, Mr. Zelensky was one of the first to congratulate him. And he also invoked the phrase, peace through strength, which is something that Ronald Reagan talked about in dealing with Russia. In other words, you can't get peace with Russia unless you're strong too. And this is, what everybody else has understood. And that Trump thinks that he can graft some kind of deal on the Ukrainians and they will accept it, and their allies accept it, is I think quite naive, and that's going to be an issue. And Europe has got to just stay focused. And frankly, Europe had better double their security and defense budgets immediately, because I don't think they can count on a Trump presidency for any help.
Well, that would be good. It remains to be seen if it's even doable. But do you believe that this win could help or hinder Ukraine's accession to NATO?
That Trump's presidency will help or hinder?
Yes.
I think I think it'll help, because I think that if Trump has done nothing positive in terms of geopolitics, he has frightened NATO and Europe into realizing that they can't be riding that gravy train forever, and that the United States is not going to prop them up militarily against Russia. And so they have started to make moves and make noises and so on. And I think one thing that may help is that they will start to pull their weight. And, Europe also has realized something else, I think, that Ukraine is their policeman. Ukraine is their border guard. And if they don't take care of Ukraine and help Ukraine and allow it into their organization, they're going to lose their border guard if the United States stops giving military aid. I'm not saying he's threatening to do that. I'm not saying he will. But, recent reports have come out that even under Biden, in the last year, Ukraine has only gotten 10% of the military aid that was promised by Biden, and should have gotten most of it by now. And so the fact is, the front line is crumbling. And that delay was due to the Republicans and led by Trump impeding the passage of these military aid bills. So the U.S. is not credible anymore, and so that's why Europe has got to get its act together with more rapidity than ever.
You spoke of Ukraine as a policeman, a European policeman. Do you believe that Ukraine, as a policeman of Europe, is prepared to sacrifice some part of its territory in exchange for a guarantee of NATO membership?
Here's Ukraine's problem. The last time this happened, there was a line drawn in 2014 And Russia promised to, talk about how they could resolve their differences. Of course, they sabotaged any attempt to do that. And also, let's not remember that, Ukraine is in this pickle because it was pushed by NATO and the United States in particular to give up its nuclear weapons, and they gave them to Russia. In return for that, Britain, France, and China, I believe, and Russia, United States, Britain, agreed that if its borders were transgressed by anyone, they would come to their defense. Well, they didn't. They didn't in 2014, and they didn't in 2022. So Ukraine is sitting there saying, well, wait a minute, nobody's worth their word on paper. This is, what can we think? What can we do here? And so they're in a terrible state. I feel so badly for Ukraine. Ukraine is a wonderful country with wonderful people, and they couldn't have done more than they've done to keep the Western alliance safe from Russia. But now they're going to be bargained over like a cat, like a cow, and carved up. And they don't have any champion if they don't have someone in the White House who's a champion, and I don't think Trump is.
Okay. President Trump said that some of U.S. allies are worse than enemies, quote. So who did he have in mind, in your view? And what does it say about his approach to collective defense? Is NATO under threat of perhaps American exit?
Yeah, look, Trump is a blowhard. That's a word, it's slang in America for someone who talks before they think and shouts before they're reasoned. And so he would blurt out these kinds of statements, accusing NATO members of being, hideous, horrible people and so on. And he doesn't have a fact to back it up. He never backs it up. It just comes off the top of his head, and it felt like it was a good thing to say at the time to get an audience revved up or to get on camera. The guy is a showman. There's not a lot of depth there. However, I will say that if he did come around to take up the cause of Ukraine, and for real, I think that they would be well advised to. Well, I think we'd all be happy about that, but I'm not convinced. If he can make more money for the United States or gain more advantage by cozying up to Putin, he will dump Ukraine and Europe.
So let's turn here to Europe now, because Hungary's Prime Minister Viktor Orban says that Trump victory would force Europe to abandon its stance on Ukraine and join him in seeking immediate peace. So how widely do you think this opinion is shared among other EU leaders?
Well, I think the last European elections showed there was an undercurrent of not necessarily pro-Russian, but anti-war, and even anti-EU sentiment across the place. The European Union has its own challenges in terms of a governance model. Like the U.S., it's widely diverse, and there's a lot of regions who don't like one another and don't get along and don't have the same ideology. So it's really difficult to run the EU, and it's really difficult to run the United States. I mean, what you've got to understand is he got a good vote, popular vote, and he won the election, but pretty much half the country doesn't like him at all. So, everybody has these constraints, and I just think that he is a dangerous man in a dangerous time.
Madam, what about the composition of Trump's cabinet? We are all thinking about a possible state secretary. Do you have any name in mind? Because the candidate of choice would tell a lot also about the dynamics, right, with European partners, among others. So Mike Pompeo was one of the closest and most trusted Trump's advisors. So do you think he could find another job in the second administration right now?
I'm not sure. I think they had their falling out, during in between the two elections. He will, because he wants to make America great again, economically and dominant. He will, and has already tapped into Elon Musk. I think Elon Musk will have a job in the cabinet, whether it's to cut government costs or to propel even more technological advances in Silicon Valley for America against China's incursion. I don't know. He will draw from his Republican stable of right-wing business economist types, and obviously people who are pro-market. The markets love this election. Bitcoin went up, gold went up, the U.S. dollar went up, markets went up roundly everywhere. Only the Chinese yuan went down. So, this is about business first. This is a business first election. So he will always look at geopolitical affairs as well as local affairs through the prism of what's best for the American economy. And that's what we're dealing with. We're dealing with a kind of a singularly minded leader here.
All right. So looks like we're witnessing a new paradigm in American foreign policy, with the U.S. turning inwards. Diane Francis, thank you very much for your comments. And stay tuned for TVP World. Thank you very much.